Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hello, welcome. I am sitting down today with an incredible woman. She is just a joy to talk to. So much wisdom, so much experience. Nischala Joy Devi is an international teacher and healer and a highly respected advocate for innovating the way that yoga is being expressed in the world. She really looks at yoga from a female perspective. She was initiated into the Paramahansa Saraswati order of sannyasis and studied with Swami Satchidananda and spent many years in an ashram setting in a monastic discipline, receiving his direct guidance and teachings. And so this has really informed her perspective and view of yoga. And her first book was called The Healing Path of Yoga. She was originally trained in Western medicine, and so it became very natural for her to look at the therapeutic benefits of yoga. But her most recent book is called The Secret Power of Yoga, and this is just a beautiful commentary on the Yoga Sutras from a female perspective, from a feminine perspective. And I think you'll find it a really lovely, beautiful, heart-centered interpretation of the Yoga Sutras. She was also featured in the documentary Yoga Woman, and she's an amazing person. So I know you're going to love this episode. Right now, she's currently working on another book called A Woman's Gita, and she's doing it as a joint project with her partner, friend, Kamala Rose. And they also have a podcast called A Woman's Gita. And if you want to learn from Nischala directly or hear more about A Woman's Gita, I would really encourage you to join the Yoga Gives Back annual gala. You can attend a live session with Nischala Joy Devi and Kamala Rose on Friday, November 8th in Los Angeles. The next day, on Saturday, November 9th, we are hosting a gala retreat. It's 3 hours of yoga. There's many, many ambassadors teaching a joint yoga class, as well as a offering of dance and sound bath and meditation, pranayama, chanting. It's going to be a really beautiful time of gathering. That's on the Saturday, November 9th, and all the funds go to support Yoga Gives Back. I will be there as a participant, retreating and enjoying and connecting with all of the ambassadors, and also taking in the wisdom of Nischala in person on Friday, November 8th. And then following that on the Sunday, we have happening our annual Global Gala. It's the 17th anniversary of the annual Global Gala on Sunday, November 10th. And Belinda Carlisle will be honored with the Namaste Award. This is all happening in LA. You can get tickets now through Yoga Gives Back. We will link to the fundraiser so that you can join us in person. It's going to be so much fun. We had so much fun last year at the gala. There's a silent auction and food and festivities. So I really hope that you join us and come and participate and hang out with all of the yoga celebrities in LA. It will be a wonderful time to relax and support an incredible cause, Yoga Gives Back, and meet incredible teachers. So I can't wait to see you there. I'm just going to assume that you're coming to LA. And if you're in LA, you have no excuse. Get your Global Gala ticket and join Nischala Joy Devi and myself and many, many, many other teachers in supporting Yoga Gives Back. It's an incredible cause that supports children and women in India with scholarships for higher education and microloans. And it's doing incredible work. So you are doing incredible work when you support Yoga Gives Back. And I hope that you will, and I hope that you do. So let's jump into this episode with Nischala and learn all about women in yoga and why it's important that we look at yoga philosophy and yoga texts from a woman's perspective. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm so pleased that you're joining me today because I have an incredible woman who I'm so excited to introduce you to. Nischala Joy Devi. You are an inspiration, and I can't wait to tell your story. Oh my gosh. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Beautiful day. Wonderful day.
Before we dive into your projects and your books, which are incredible, tell me a little bit about your journey into yoga, because it started a long time ago. And I know one of your teachers was Indra Devi, and you spent many years in a monastery. And tell me if you can. I mean, I'm sure it's long, but
How long do we have?
Yeah, I know.
It's interesting because while we're doing things, we don't really look back. We're focused on the next step, what we're doing, the next thing to do. And every once in a while, you get a little break. Like I think the pandemic was that for me. I just got a chance to step back and say, okay, what have I done in my life? Yeah. And where do I want to go from here? I always joked with people that Mother Nature, at that point, she was a little annoyed with us. And she said, everybody go to your room and stay there until you figure out what you're going to do next to make everything better. Yeah. That was my interpretation of Mother Earth. And so that's what I did in essence. And I really started looking back and seeing how I was guided on these pathways, because being raised in the West, we really didn't think about these things. I mean, I didn't anyway. I had no religious education growing up, basically. And I didn't know what was anything. I tried to figure out, is this all there is? And why am I here? And what am I doing? The universal question. And then I started out in medicine. And so I think that says something right there, because there was never any desire to go into profit experiences. It was always a service. That was my orientation. It just the way I was, not that one is better than the other, but I could see that movement. And when I got very disillusioned with Western medicine, I would look at people and they would be diagnosed and I'd say, yeah, that's the body, but there's more to it. There's something that's enlivening the body, that's making the body move, that's making the mind think. What could that be? And I would look at people when I would talk to them, or I would go into surgery and I would just stand there at the table and I go, where are they? Where are the people right now? Their bodies are being operated on. We very calmly say we anesthetize them. Where are they? Where are they? Where did they go? So this started that. And then finally there was a breaking point. I was working in a medical clinic and getting pretty burnt out in it. And then I went to have this is a very funny story, actually, short, but funny. I went to have dinner because I was too tired to cook in a restaurant that had group tables. Yeah. That nobody sat together if you came in by yourself, which was very nice. Yeah. You didn't feel alone and you didn't have to talk, but you could. And I was sat across from this man. Oh, the name of the restaurant, I have to tell you, was called Good Karma Cafe. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was sitting across from this man. I'd never met him before. And he looked at me and he said to me, you look exhausted. I said, well, thank you. At the end of a very long day, he said, I think you need yoga. I said, I think I need sleep is what I think I need. And he said, check it out. There's an institute right down the road. It may be something that could help you. Well, sure enough, the next couple of days I got sick and I had a bad cold and I couldn't go into the clinic because then you
Yeah.
spread it around. So I decided I would go over and take a class. And I walked up, I saw this picture of the teacher. I looked at it and I said to myself at the time, very interesting, I don't know what he has, but whatever he has, I want it.
Wow.
Because I could see a peacefulness in his face.
Yeah.
And it's just something came out of the picture. And I was so fraught at that time, being so busy and doing this very difficult work that I was doing. And that was it. Basically, it was love at first sight. I took a class and got involved and started teaching. And then I realized I wanted to dedicate my whole life to yoga.
Wow.
I became a monastic at that time.
Wow.
So, and it was a very, at least at that point, less so now, very traditional Vedic ashram. It was, my teacher was definitely Indian, male, and very strict,
Yeah.
and really adhered to the principles of yoga, strict vegetarian diet, meditating 3 times a day, doing service, etc.
Yeah.
Then at a certain point, it was enough. I give you the short version of that.
Yeah.
I went into the ashram to be free,
Yeah.
and I left the ashram to be free.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. The walls got a little too tight. And then I started just doing what I do and developed the yoga therapy and Yoga Alliance and IOYT. And
Amazing. Where was the ashram?
there were a few of them. There were a couple in the United States. There was one in Connecticut, was one of the main ones, Connecticut, a couple in California, and then moved to Virginia. So
Okay.
now the main center is in Virginia, but I'm no longer associated with the organization.
Okay. And it was mainly like a meditation type practice you were doing and
No, we
chanting
did
or
everything. We
everything?
did all 3 of the aspects of yoga. We did bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga.
Wow.
And it wasn't just asana. We did very little asana.
Yeah.
Even in our asana classes, there were hatha yoga classes. They all had deep relaxation, meditation, pranayama.
Yeah.
So it was an all-inclusive class. It wasn't just asana. Asana happened much later.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was just giving a talk on the history of yoga, and we could see actually when that came in, and it became yoga as exercise. So yoga as exercise took off, and yoga as a spiritual practice kind of went a little bit underground.
Yeah. I have a theory about that, and it has to do with aerobics.
Yes, you're right. You're actually right. Because Krishnamacharya,
Yeah.
who never left India,
Yeah.
watched American TV and watched the exercise and thought it was a good idea.
I love this story.
And then incorporated the exercise into the asana
Yeah.
and called it yoga as exercise.
Yes.
That's how it happened. Took off because Iyengar came, Pratabi Joyce came, Jessica Char came, Indra Devi came.
Yeah.
So they all perpetuated this idea of yoga as exercise, which was not traditional at all.
No. Yeah, especially in India. I have a pranayama guru. I mean, I studied with Patabi Joyce, but also studied pranayama in a very traditional hatha yoga ashram and setting with my pranayama teacher. And he always laughs and would say that about Ashtanga yoga. He'd say, oh, Ashtanga yoga is not yoga. It's just exercise.
And then they take the name Ashtanga.
I know.
The 8 facets.
Yeah.
And they don't do 8 facets.
Yeah, barely.
I don't quite get it.
You know, I think the idea was that the asana gave you a taste of something. And
True.
I believe it like increases sattva. It increases your awareness, which makes you curious. Yeah, it can. That's right.
Increased rajas.
That's right.
Which is most people, that's what I see.
Yes, that's so true.
It always fascinates me that people who practice asana for years and years and years
can't
sit.
Yes. Yeah, that
Still
is fascinating, isn't it?
fascinating to me because that was the whole purpose of asana.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
whole purpose of asana is to get you to sit
Yeah.
and be still, that it takes away the restlessness of the body. But we have created more restlessness, and now people can't be still at all. Very ironic.
It is. And when you start teaching, I have another really interesting question about this. You left the ashram to be free. You entered to be free and left to be free. But was that a difficult period for you? Was it a period of trying to like find yourself again or figure out who you were without the ashram? I mean, it must have been quite a difficult transition in a way, or a challenging transition with some self-identity and trying to figure out what was next for you.
There's no words to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little like getting out of prison.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have a job,
Yeah.
you don't have a home, you don't have money.
Yeah.
We had nothing. So when we went in, we gave everything we had. Money, jewelry, everything
Yeah.
was given.
Wow.
And we were assured that we would be taken care of if we gave that.
Yeah.
And for me, the most important thing is I wanted to make sure that I was firmly on a spiritual path. That to me was my whole life and
Yeah.
still is. I enjoy life, but that's my main pathway.
Yeah.
And so when I left with actually less than what I came in with.
Yeah.
And material. I had no name because we had a monastic name.
Right.
I had only monastic clothing. So I had no clothes. I had no place to live, no money. As a matter of fact, to leave the ashram, someone had to drive me to the North Carolina border where another friend picked me up because I had no money even for bus or train or anything. We were homeless for about a year, sleeping on friends'
Wow.
floors, massage rooms, basements. Yeah. And it was a really rough transition because our society doesn't embrace that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And try finding a place to live when you don't have any references.
Yeah.
It was really rough. And the good news is I had my practices that were so strong by that time because I had been in the ashram for over 20 years.
Wow.
I think about it, meditating 3 times a day and doing service and chanting and scriptural study. I had the inner strength
Hmm.
to deal with it, which people who come out of prison or drug rehab or whatever, because that's how I likened it. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had an inner life,
Yeah.
and I felt very grateful for that. And also, I took one of the best things from the ashram with me, which was another monk, and we got married. We created our own little ashram that we
Yeah.
live in now. And so that's how I survived it. Yeah. They were gracious. I had been teaching and they still asked me to come and teach. So that's,
Nice.
yeah, it was as receptive as it could have been considering I had dropped out for 20 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's such a, I mean, re-immersion into society is
Yeah.
very
Don't
different.
know if I actually did it.
Yeah.
Finally got part of society. It's still a little strange.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like one foot in 2 boats, and if the boats start moving, it's really uncomfortable. We're still vegetarians, we still meditate, so it makes it a little strange
Yeah.
living in the world. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I can see that. But also, it's helpful. I feel like it's one of the only ways to survive living in the world.
For me, it is. For me,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
How you didn't have any conflict of like doing the practice like after leaving the teacher, because I'm assuming it would have been a very challenging thing to leave, like emotional, and you didn't have any like conflict in keeping the practices. You were able to see them as separate from that environment.
Yeah. All along, see, I've been going to India
Mm.
and actually studying with Indian teachers in India, not Western teachers.
Yeah.
And I saw where the teachings came from.
Mhm.
So I was in no illusion that it was his teachings,
Yeah.
which a lot of other people do. They still think of it that way.
Yeah.
And I knew that the prayers, the chants, the mantras, I knew where they came from.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to link it to him.
Yeah.
teachings
Yeah.
rather than the person
Yeah.
that was presenting the teachings. And that's why I was able to go along and keep teaching myself, because if I didn't believe in it, I can't teach what I don't believe.
Yeah.
And I saw continuously the transformational effect it had on me and on everybody else that came in contact with.
Yeah.
I think you get in trouble when the teacher, and this is what we're seeing a lot today, changes the teachings. They alter them.
Mm-hmm.
And once you alter them, you don't know if they're going to survive. You don't know if they're going to work.
Yeah.
We do know the ones from 5,000 years ago work.
Yeah.
That we know. And it's just, it's like bread. You can't take the flour, you can't from the yeast once it's baked.
Yeah.
When they start changing them, and I see a lot of alteration of the ancient teachings, I think to myself, will they stand the test of time?
Mm-hmm.
If the teacher lets you down, do you still have faith in the teachings?
Yeah.
There's a beautiful expression they use in Buddhism. And they say, I lost faith in the Buddha. I lost faith in the Dharma, the teachings. Lost faith in the Sangha. And I have to go back. So if you can keep faith in at least one of those, then you can keep it.
That's
And it
beautiful.
saves you. Yeah.
From all of your experience with all the different, teachings from antiquity, from India, these ancient practices, the mantra, the meditation, the yoga asana, the pranayama, which one do you, feel is the most central or important for people to practice? Do you have something that you feel like everyone is beneficial for everyone, or the strongest, or?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer because there's no such thing as a person. There's the stages that the person's in. So where is the person at? Let me answer it a little different way.
Yeah.
If I can use the word goal, and it's not really my word, but if I can use the goal of yoga, what is the goal of yoga? So the goal of yoga is realization of the self.
Yeah.
Period. That's it. To realize who we are and know that we are actually the divine. Whatever steps needs to be taken to get there is good.
Yeah.
So when a person first comes in, as we talked about, if they are physically oriented, that's what you start with. Get them comfortable for what they're oriented to. But no, don't keep them there. So the expression nowadays in a lot of the classes, which I always laugh at, is meet the people where they are, right?
Yeah.
Meet the people where this has become the thing. And I always go back to Steve Jobs. I'm sorry, who I go back to. And when they said to him, you can't make a phone like this. Do you know if people even want it? And he said, people don't know what they want until you tell them what they want.
Yeah.
And obviously he was right, because now everybody has a smartphone, right? It's a little bit like that with yoga. When they come in, they may think they want physical.
Mm-hmm.
Give it to them. But then slowly meet them where they're at. But what I added the second part, but don't leave them there.
Yeah, I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? You keep working with them.
Yeah.
So first you do asana, then you introduce them to some pranayama, and then pratyahara, and you slowly calm them down till you get, to me, what's the most important is meditation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's impossible. A tumultuous mind cannot meditate. So you need to go through the other steps. And that's why we have the real Ashtanga, not the pretend Ashtanga, but the real 8 facets that we constantly go through and refine ourselves over and over again. You say a harsh word to somebody, and then you have to come back and say, wait a second, was that right? What did that do to him? Even more important, what did it do to me?
Yeah.
So this is why. So meditation is, I won't say the end point, but it's definitely a place that we're trying to get to. Yeah. And what I see is teachers are not moving the students along. They stay in the beginning stages, and the teachers are also staying in the beginning stages, which is sad.
Yeah, I know. I teach asana like in workshops and retreats and sometimes in classes. And it's funny because often students will say, well, what muscles do I use to do this? Or I want to do a handstand. How do I do it? Or where am I lacking strength? And I'm always laughing inside. And I'm like, I don't really look at asana like through the lens of the body. So I don't really know what muscle you need to like work on here. But I can tell you energetically what's going on and where you need to like concentrate your mind. I mean,
It's interesting. I was watching one of the master teachers, I won't name him, teaching headstand to somebody. And he kept on saying, straighten your legs. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. And he bent down and in their ear, he whispered, relax your mind.
Amazing.
The legs went like that.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think we realize how much we do with the mind, how much we can have a wonderful life or a crazy, not so wonderful life, all based on what's here.
Yeah.
Most of what happens is in here anyway.
Yeah. And I feel like this is a seed also that was planted for you when you were a doctor as well.
Well, I wasn't a doctor, I was a physician's assistant.
Physician's assistant looking at like what is the cause of these physical ailments, or like where is the person, this is what's happening in their body, but where's the origin of this, what's the root?
And still today, modern medicine is not asking that question.
Do you think that kind of led you to then be one of the founders of the Association for Yoga Therapy?
Absolutely. Well, actually, it was interesting how that came about because I was working at the time for research with the Ornish Program, cardiac research. Cancer was with Commonweal. And we were ready to move into the next stage of moving it into 10 hospitals. It was another study we were doing, multi-center. And we wanted to get Medicare as approval so people could go in and not have to pay out of pocket. We realized that financial burden is a huge stressor on people. We didn't want to add more. So someone in our group made a 6,000-page grant.
Wow.
1,000 pages. Can you imagine?
No.
And one of the things in it, we had to describe the different modalities that we were using and who was the person who oversaw that. So the nurse was easy, the dietitian was easy, the psychotherapist, the nurse, the doctor, they're all standard. Mm-hmm. And then they turned to me and they said, what about yoga? What about a yoga teacher? And I went, oops, what about a yoga teacher? And they said, well, how should they choose a yoga teacher in these hospitals? So I started writing everything down and then I thought to myself, I shouldn't be deciding on what a yoga teacher is alone. So I got on the phone and I called up a few of my friends who are teachers, very well-known teachers. If I describe them, you would know them. I said, I want to have lunch. So we all sat down and I told them the situation. And they said, well, why don't we have a meeting about this at the next conference and let's see what comes up. And that's how it all started. Wow. Because we had to define what was a yoga teacher. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have the qualifications because anybody at that point could pick up a book and start teaching yoga. Yeah. That's how Yoga Alliance and IAYT came.
Wow. Yeah. To create some criteria or credentialing.
Some kind of credentialing. If they're going to work in the world, there needs to be some kind. Everybody else has credentials.
Yeah.
Even massage therapists.
Yeah. I mean, and most of them have a certifying body where you have to go and take an international exam or a national exam.
Whereas yoga teachers were all doing it rogue.
Yeah.
We were just out there feeling it. And it's also hard because once you start qualifying it and quantifying it, then you lose the mystical part of it. Yeah. And I think that's what's missing in yoga today, the mystical part. Yeah. People have anatomy and physiology down. Yeah. They can do that. But what lives in that body? What makes the body breathe? Forget about the breathing. What makes it breathe? What makes it think? Right?
Yeah.
So that's why I went back to the wisdom teachings, because when I look and see what are they not teaching, this is what they're not teaching.
Yeah.
And to me, this is what will sustain you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You may not be able to do asana forever. You may not even be able to do pranayama forever, but you can always know who you are. And that's why I decided to give the modern student, the modern reader, the modern yogi, something that they can relate to.
Yeah.
Not something written 5,000 years.
Yeah, I love this. What you're saying, I was feeling really like a little bit of lackluster for teaching asana because of, like, for me, the pranayama, the meditation practices, this essence of what you've said, you can always know who you are, right? You can always connect into that. You don't actually need all the other stuff, right? You just need to be able to, like, get still enough to be aware, to feel it. And so I was like, why are we doing all this other stuff? Like, it's just a distraction. It's so crazy. It's like, doesn't really matter. And it's like coming, it's going, it's transient, it's not real. But then I became like a spinal energetics practitioner, which is more, it's kind of like a Reiki or like working with energy, but also working with the physical body. And I started to apply more of that energy practice back into the teaching of the asana classes and giving the adjustments. And it like woke something up in me and really connected me back into why I enjoyed asana in the first place, which was that ability to like go in and feel the movement of the subtle energy in the body. And it refreshened the whole practice. And I was like, oh, right. This is why we're doing it, because it's so easy to get lost, I think, with the social media and this like everyone like just performing. And I'm like, yoga's not about performing. I don't get it. Like, what is going on? And so then it was really great because it was just like this like connection into this subtle energy. And that's part of the meditation that moves the mind into the meditation, because you have to be so focused and like present to feel that energy and that movement of energy. And so I love that you're bringing it to that, because I feel like that meditation is really at the heart of all the yoga practices.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. And it's not only everything, but it's exactly what we're not taught in the West.
Yeah. Exactly.
Even in religious institutes, we're not taught to be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're taught to recite prayer. We're taught to chant and sing and do all these other wonderful things. But then be quiet.
Yeah.
After you've prayed, be quiet. After you sang a hymn, be quiet.
Yeah.
We don't have time for that. And that's where, when it was brought over, it was so foreign for people that the teacher said, okay, let's just go physical. They like physical. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
But the sadness to me is people think that's what yoga is now.
And it's not. And in a way, it takes us further away from the essence of who we are.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And it also makes us a very physical culture.
Yeah.
And then that leads to all the beauty products and all the things that people are doing to their bodies in an effort to maintain this youthful experience instead of enjoying and the different stages of life. It's not all, shouldn't be all youth.
Yeah.
Different stages, and they're all beautiful.
Yeah.
And I remember someone asked Maya Angelou at a certain point, I think she was probably in her 80s at that point, a couple of years before she died. And they asked her about the different stages. And she said the 50s is when you're building your career and you're getting strong and everything like that. And she said the 60s, you take it a little bit easier. And she said, the 70s are sweet. And then someone said, and the 80s? And she closed her eyes and she got this beautiful expression on her face. And she said, do it if you can.
Amazing.
And I thought to myself, wow.
Yeah.
This is a woman who knows herself.
Yeah.
You know, every season is beautiful.
Yeah.
Only when we look back and we say, oh, I wish I was still in my 20s. I wish I was still in my 30s. You really don't.
Yeah.
You really don't. The struggles then, we forget the struggles.
Mm-hmm.
What we remember is the youth. So it's for different stages. I remember some of the very strong Iyengar teachers, especially the women, when they went into menopause,
Mm-hmm.
the whole practice changed.
Yeah.
They didn't do the hard asanas anymore. They started doing more restorative and more gentle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we have to get away from what the public
Yeah.
is being told
Mm-hmm.
and instead embrace the inner, the Antara yoga, the inner
Mm.
practices, because that's something that will take us to the end.
Yeah. I love that you bring up this stage of transition for women. I think so many women struggle with this. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm in it. So it's like in my awareness and my consciousness and, field of people that I'm connected with. But that it's such an awkward stage. It's such a difficult stage, I think, to let go of what was and enter into a new stage. A friend of mine said it's like puberty in your 40s and 50s, and it's
The opposite of puberty. Yeah. And if you have a teenage daughter that's going through puberty at the same time you're going through menopause, it's amazing. The mood swings, the everything, the cravings, everything that you go to, there's not understanding what's happening in your body. It's changing and you don't understand it.
yeah.
But the thing about this is like with everything, with menopause, it's not what you do during menopause, it's what you did for the 10 years before menopause.
Yeah. I love
How
that.
is the body and how is it going to relate to that?
Yeah.
Are you filled with sugar? Are you filled with caffeine? Are you filled with this, that, the other thing? Have you been pushing your body before that? If you have, it will show up in menopause.
Yeah.
That's not the time to look at it. It's 10 years before.
Yeah.
And there's a freedom in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's when a lot of women become really creative.
Yeah.
Menopause.
Yeah. I had this insight drop in this morning and having this heat coming from within. And I was like, man, this heat is it's like the transformative fire. Like something is it is a very mystical phase of life. And I think we really need to reframe it as tapping into that mystical energy. And it's coming from within you. That's
yeah.
Unexplainable. No one even can explain it.
Well, that's because they've all been men.
I know.
That's why they can't explain it. You're so right. And to think how much energy went into the ability to have a child.
Yeah.
Tremendous amount of energy, prana, whatever you want to call it. Now, it's free to do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking of it as an end, it's a beginning. It's a time of freedom. You can do whatever you want. You have all this energy.
Yeah.
Use it. Use it wisely. So when we look at the yoga wisdom, what we're talking about now is called the third stage of life. It's called as the vanaprastha stage. And this stage, what they do is they divide it half for the world, so you can still have your job, your whatever you're doing, and then half for spiritual practice.
Ooh. I love it.
With vanaprastha. Yeah.
I'm getting inspired just listening.
And then you get into sannyasa, is 100%
yeah.
dedicated to the spiritual life.
Yeah.
They set it out that way. It was an 100-year cycle, and every 25 years you changed. Yeah. And it explains a lot. It explains a lot.
I always feel like people were having children a lot younger then, though.
So people had children a lot younger and a lot older. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not people, women.
Women, exactly.
Yeah. But you need to really name it. Or
Name it.
having your children. It's always funny to me when I see a couple, and it's sweet. It's funny, sweet. When he says, "We're pregnant."
I know.
I said, "Do we have morning sickness? Do we have cravings? Are we gaining weight?
I know.
And who's going to push that baby out when it comes?"
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little different for women, for sure. A little more going on.
Yeah.
A little more recovery time also, I feel.
We bring them in and share it with them. which it should be. He's the father, or hopefully he's the father, or maybe.
Yeah.
So it's just, I hear a lot of talk about menopause right now, but I really go back to how are we taking care of our body? And it's interesting because it talks about a pause. Pause.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
Imagine if the symptoms lessened, if we actually paused, if we actually took a year or two to pull back, reevaluate, and then step out again. Because, most women did not live to menopausal age. We don't really have any records of how that went, but now they are. And they're dynamic. We see these women, they're living in their 80s and 90s. They're totally dynamic people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
so
amazing.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw Jane Fonda on the television the other day. She walked on. They said, "You look great." She said, 87.
Holy cow. Speaking of aerobics and the power of asana.
And the power of her mind.
Yeah. 100%.
Always looking out for someone else.
Yeah.
Global warming, global crisis, helping women, helping people. She's always there with that.
Yeah.
I think that's what keeps her going. Yeah.
Yeah. Service is so powerful, right?
Oh.
Like, I think that's the fruit of the yoga practice is really coming and being of service in the world. I mean, I think you spoke a little bit about this on your podcast, which is wonderful. Everyone should listen to it. Yes, a woman's Gita, but the spiritual practice being like a little sapling with the fence around it. Mm-hmm. It was a metaphor that my teacher also has used, maybe you can just explain it here again. The service, the tree that it grows into is really where we need to be focused when it comes to spiritual practice in yoga.
We talked a little bit about asana as the entrance.
Yeah.
I think karma yoga is more of an entrance.
Yeah.
I think this is something everybody can and benefits from doing. So what I was explaining is that when we first begin practice or of anything, but especially spiritual practice, we have to protect ourselves a little bit. So it's like a young sapling. You put a fence around it to protect it so animals don't bang into it or push it over or a high wind doesn't come or something like that. And then as the tree grows, you don't need the fencing anymore. And it eventually comes big enough that it is now sheltering and protecting that which it was protecting itself from originally. Mm-hmm. So now people can come and rest under the tree. Animals can come for shade, or if it's raining, etc. So this is how we become. In the beginning, we need to protect ourselves, but then after a while, we start being the ones that are the teachers. After we learn something, you learn from the teachers. I remember my mother telling me they were very poor when she was young, and everybody wanted to take piano lessons, but they couldn't afford it. So they sent one of the children to take piano lessons. And when they came home, they taught the other children. Yeah. And that's how I think of yoga too. We practice, we get the benefit, we see the incredible potential of realization, and then we teach it to others. Yeah. And that's how it's been going for over 5,000 years, that perpetuation of the teachings and passing them on and passing them on and passing them on. And that's why I feel to me the best way to pass them on is in written, because they get changed so quickly in oral. Yeah. And we see that. It was interesting. I was doing a class last night and I was asked an interesting question because someone had a scientific mind and they were reading about the cities. And they said, "Oh, yes, you're flying around, but it's only in your mind you're flying around." I said, "No, this is actual flying." And they couldn't grasp it because it's not something that we know.
Yeah.
It's something beyond us. But there's so much beyond us. Yeah. Be curious. Yeah. Find out what that is. What are these saints and sages talking about? Why have they been talking about this for 5,000 years? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that brings us to the Yoga Sutras, which is a beautiful book, The Secret Power of Yoga. Hey, we both have our copies that you wrote. And it's the Yoga Sutras written from a woman's perspective. Is that fair to say?
I couldn't write it from a man's perspective.
Yeah.
Harmony, I got tired. I've been teaching the Yoga Sutras now most of my adult life.
Yeah.
And I got tired of having to change them as I was teaching them.
Nice.
And finally, one of my students said, or a couple of my students said, why don't you just write this down? Then we can have a book. And so that's what I did. And when it says it's from a woman's perspective, I think we have to understand what that means. It's not that we talk about uteruses in it. We actually don't.
Or menopause.
Or menopause. I talk a little bit about that. But what the difference is, I really feel because mothers aren't the upbringers now of the children, so soul support, but they spend the most time with them. And I think one of the things that mothers and women try to teach is, can you say that in the positive? Can you say that in a positive way instead of saying something bad about somebody? Mm-hmm. And when I looked at the sutras, I saw that there were many of them translated in the negative. And that was not okay for me. So that's one of the things I changed. I just moved everything to the positive. Instead of nonviolence, it's expressing love and compassion.
Yeah.
Why not? Why do we have to be talking about holding back on violence? So I softened it. And the other thing that's always missing are women-centered parables.
Yeah.
They're all about men.
Yeah.
They're always about men. And the word he. So one of the reasons I chose the sutras, there's very little gender in it.
Yeah.
Very little gender. Matter of fact, they try to attach a he to Ishwara, and Ishwara is not a he. But they attach the he anyway because a man wrote it.
Yeah.
That's why. So I guess if an elephant wrote it, you would look at it through an elephant's eye.
Yeah.
And what happened was phenomenal to me. I don't know how many people who are listening or you yourself are writers, but writing is done in isolation. You don't really know how people are going to receive it. Yeah. And the publisher was also not quite sure how this was going to go. So they only printed, I think they printed 5,000 copies to begin with. They didn't think, they said, why waste space in the warehouse?
Right.
And they had to reprint twice before it even came out.
Wow.
That's how hungry women were for it.
Yeah.
And still it's used in most teachers' trainings.
Yeah.
Because it's relatable. It's relatable. And it's as accurate as I could make it. Yeah. I mean, I did my best to try to follow, but Patanjali never gave a commentary. So it was really difficult. You had to really guess what he was trying to say. Yeah. And then the other question I always ask, if he knew I was a woman, would he say it any differently? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been a real joy in my life and something that I'm hoping that people will continue with, taking it. And I even put practices in. It's the only book I know of in the sutras, practices. Yeah. Because women are like that. We like to feel it. We want to not just hear it or see it. We want to feel it in our bodies. What does this feel like to talk to myself in a sweet, calm way? Yeah. Yeah. So it was, and I think only a woman can write a book about for women.
Yes.
Feeling.
100%. And I just love it. I mean, the wisdom of it it's amazing. It's so deep. And I love, like, even your definition of yoga is uniting the consciousness in the heart. I feel like that is, I mean, the depth of the wisdom and the reality of the truth there is, for me, it's just like, that's it. It's like, I mean, you don't need anything else after that.
Well, it's so sad because I would say, and I'm being generous, 98% of the books talk about it from the mind.
I mean, it's just really apparent when everything's like about this. And of course, yeah, yoga is for our mind, but like our mind and our heart have to come together, right?
Well, you know what I did? I was so unhappy with the translations. First of all, the English that they use is probably archaic or non-existent.
Yeah, I've read some of those. Like,
Yoga is the mental modifications of the mind stuff. Now, I have seen people sit there and shake their head, and I ask them, "Do you actually know what that means? First of all, what is mind stuff?
yeah.
And what are mental modifications?" So the Upanishads predates the Yoga Sutras.
Yeah.
So I went back to the Upanishads, and it's very clear in the Upanishads where we live. We live as a small light or flame in the center of the heart.
Yeah.
Nothing about the mind. Nothing about the mind.
Yeah.
Mind is a new concept. It's less than 200 years old. It came in with modern psychology. The ancients never talked about the mind. They talked about the heart. They believed thought and feeling came from the heart, then went to the head.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that we presuppose in our society that are built on straw, not on brick.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a very good foundation. But
Yeah.
we're perpetuating it. So maybe one day it will.
I think we're moving into a new space, even scientifically, where it is becoming more about the heart, and we are recognizing that consciousness actually lives in the body, not just like in our heads. And I feel like there is this kind of more integration of maybe masculine and feminine kind of ways of being in the world, and looking at how our energy moves from our heart, radiating from our heart space. And that's maybe even the most powerful part of our being. So I do feel like we're taking small steps there. And I think your Yoga Sutras is a giant leap that everyone should read. And
Thank you. Instead of listening to the news, which it seems you don't, if
No.
you have that view of the world. It's your view. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like all about like we're transforming consciousness.
See, and I think, but you're making a very important point. You're making a very important point. You go in the direction of what you believe.
Yeah.
So if you're watching a lot of news, if you're watching a lot of what's going on in the world, that's what you're focusing on. If you're watching or meditating or reading scriptural books, that's what you're focused on. So it's really up to you what you want to focus on. One will bring you peace and one will bring you craziness.
100%.
That's what it is. And people say to me, "Oh, well, you should be informed. You should know." And I always say, if something's important enough, someone will tell me.
That's what I say too.
I have one friend, I tell her, "I don't want to hear it." And she said, "Just tell me anyway." I keep saying, "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it." And she keeps going. So I have no doubt if something important happens, she'll make sure that I know about it. But don't just look at the now.
Yeah.
Even though we're told to be in the now, you have to project, what is this going to do in the future? For instance, if I go out tonight for dinner and I have a big meal with an appetizer and a big dessert and lots of drink, etc., I'm going to enjoy that. But what about tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
When I get up, how am I going to feel? We have to get away from the immediate gratification and look a little bit. What is this doing? And this is the questions I ask when I'm ready to do something. Is it going to bring me closer or further from my peace? And that's how I make a decision. And sometimes I say, I don't care. I want it anyway. Okay. At least you thought about it. Now the consequences are on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you wake up tomorrow with a bad headache, you'll know why. We have to take the responsibility. And if that's something we want, now not everybody wants a spiritual life. That's okay.
Yeah.
But they should at least make it a conscious decision, not an unconscious decision.
Yeah.
Don't do it just because you're not thinking about it, but make a decision. No, I want a secular life. Good. Then enjoy it to the fullest. Because at a certain point, you'll get tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It will burn you. And you'll come back to spiritual life.
Yeah. But that can be really helpful, I think, sometimes, especially women, I think really struggle with trying to balance all the things, taking care of the family, working, managing a house. Like there's just like so many things to do. And then you add on a spiritual practice on top of it. And a lot of women come to me just like, how do I do all of these things? How do I make time for my spiritual practice when I have all these other demands and important things that I have to do and take care of in the world?
And it's real. It's real.
Yeah, it's real. Exactly. It's a real problem.
And I may sound like a reactionary,
Mhm.
and I'll take that chance. We need to not think that we're an entire team. We need to train the children. It was very interesting. I was talking to someone the other day who has 5 children,
Wow.
and it's now, where are we? Early September. And we were talking, and she said, "Oh, the kids are back in school." And I said, "So now you have more time for yourself." "I do, but now I have to do all the things I didn't do when they were there." And if you think back, children of, say, our grandparents' generation, they worked in the house, they set the table, they cleaned the dishes, they did laundry, they did all kinds of things.
Mhm.
We need to get the team back.
Mm.
It can't be just women doing all these things.
Yeah.
If you have older children, they can do their own laundry. You don't need to do their laundry. And if you have a partner, they should be pulling their weight.
Totally.
So the problem is we're afraid to do this. We're afraid to speak up as women, and we take on the burden, and then we get sick, burnt out. But instead, we need to get back to a team. They've talked a lot about it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to run a home.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say to the women. You need to have time to yourself every single day,
Mhm.
regardless.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. The men get it,
Yeah. They take it. They have no problems.
and you can train the children. I know a lot of children, I'll call up and they'll say, "Can I talk to your mom?" And they say, "I'm sorry, this is her yoga time."
That's great.
Yeah, I can't. I was told unless the house is burning, I should not interrupt her. So they can be trained to do that.
Yeah.
But we have to prioritize our spiritual life.
Mhm.
That is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And the family needs to respect that.
Mhm.
The problem is we keep it clandestinely hidden.
Yeah.
Instead, bring it forward. They should know, I'm going in to do yoga now. Not I need some quiet time. I'm going in to do yoga. Can I come? I'm sorry, this isn't the time for you to come in.
Yeah.
I love you, and I'll spend time with you afterwards, but this is not the time. But we need to get that strength, that power back.
Mm.
We've lost it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. Women are extremely powerful, and we've
So
taken a second step,
yeah.
and we can't do that.
Yeah.
We need to become the power that we are and bring everyone with us. That's the difference between women and men.
Mhm.
We bring everyone with us. I remember when I wrote my first book, The Healing Path of Yoga,
Mhm.
I was talking to my literary agent, and it was a lot of work. I really didn't want to do it. Too much sitting at the computer. I wanted to be with people.
Yeah.
And I said something to her, and she said to me, "How many people do you think you can talk to in a year?" I said, "Well, I do my best. I travel all around."
Mhm.
She said, "Your book can reach many more for many more years."
Wow.
And that's the message we have to give. This is who we are. We are strong, powerful women, but we can't do everything.
Yeah.
We just can't. And I see people. The other day, I was doing a class. A woman was taking the class in her car while her son was playing soccer, you know?
Yeah. I've been there. So I know
So
intimately.
why can't we prioritize and make us
Yeah.
as important? That's the question, because our lives really depend on it.
Yeah. I think our world depends on it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need more women in leadership positions, and it starts in the home.
Yeah.
If you can't control your home, you certainly can't control the Senate or the House or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I'm getting this story or metaphor of Shiva or Vishnu or Brahma being the sort of energy of the consciousness, but it's the Shakti that has the power that moves things in
Yeah.
the world, right? We always have this metaphor in Indian philosophy of even like Purusha being the consciousness and then Prakriti, which is a feminine noun, being the energy that's infusing life in the world. And so there is something so powerful about the feminine energy and its ability to create and to change and to activate and enliven. And it's just like without it, there is no power. Nothing gets done.
Nothing's manifested. Yeah.
Yeah.
But women have been kept down. And like we're trying to control nature,
Yeah.
it's trying to control women.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't work. It really doesn't work because they still have the power to reproduce
Yeah.
and nurture. So we really have to get back on the right path in our societies
Yeah.
and start honoring not just women, but spirituality. We don't honor spirituality.
No.
We don't even know what to do with it. So this is something that only we can do on an individual basis.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not a group change.
Yeah.
Each one of us. And the thing about training your children or having them do chores,
Yeah.
you're making them better people.
Yeah.
And I always think of the boys that are trained that way, that whoever their wife is will appreciate the mother.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But why should it ever be different than that?
Yeah.
They're eating, they have dishes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see families where the whole family is participating
Mm-hmm.
in making the meal and cleaning up the meal and taking care of the house, the garden, the dog, whatever it is, it's a much different experience.
Yeah.
And then when they see the mother meditating or doing yoga practice, that is a vision to them too. Oh, my mother does yoga. Maybe I'll try it too.
Yeah.
So all this thing is so positive. But what we're doing is we're letting the children be idle. And that's the worst thing you can do with children. They have an inquisitive mind. They have to keep thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love this reminder. It's so good.
Yeah.
How do you think, I mean, it's been fun to listen to your podcast and you have a book coming out as well.
It's going to be a while, but
Yeah. Okay.
we're still in the process of looking for a publisher. And
Okay.
we have a very good agent.
Yes.
And
Perfect.
he's helping us. Yeah.
But how do you think that's going to be different? I mean, it's such an interesting story because the couple things that kind of stood out to me as I was listening was, I mean, some of the women characters like Drupadi, and they're not even in the Gita, but they're in the story of the Mahabharata.
We're in the Mahabharata. Yeah.
Yeah. But also they have like, I mean, it's women, as you were saying, who don't have any choice and don't have a lot of power and it's not very like positively empowering for women reading that story. You feel a bit like, I'm not sure I like this time period in history very much.
Right.
So how do you think like the translation will go? Like how will the Gita be from a woman's perspective? What are you sort of anticipating to be the essence, I guess, of that translation?
Well, it's very tricky. I had personally tried to do a translation of the Gita probably for the last 15 years at least.
Wow.
Every time I opened the book and started, I closed it, put it back on the shelf. I said, I can't imagine. So it's different than the Yoga Sutras. It's a totally different book. And I'm having to use a totally different part of my mind for it because, first of all, the sutras are very inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first thing we have to understand is the difference between the two books.
Yeah.
If I may. So the Yoga Sutras are written for a group of people that are sadhus, sannyasis, renunciates, and Brahmins. It's written for people who they assume want realization of the self, period.
Yeah.
They're not looking for making friends with their neighbors. They're not looking forward to getting a good job. They just want to realize themselves.
Yeah.
And they have spent their life doing it. And this is a how-to book. So if you read the sutras, it will take you through to samadhi if you do it how it's prescribed.
Yeah.
So it's a very, and I'll use the word, almost elitist book, the sutras, compared to the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
The Bhagavad Gita is a story.
Yeah.
The sutras are not a story. They're just pithy. There you go. I put the stories in. Other people put stories in.
Yeah.
For the Bhagavad Gita, it's this small conversation extricated from this huge tome. They say that the Mahabharata is the largest poem, the biggest poem in the world ever.
Mm-hmm.
So what you get is this conversation that is in the middle of a battlefield between two men, right?
Yeah.
And you have to understand India, and especially India then.
Yeah.
Women were not anything.
Yeah.
Women were not even thought of. Women were the ones that cooked the food, the one that washed the clothes, the ones that healed the wounds,
Yeah.
had the babies, etc. They were not included in any of the castes at all. They were just not part of it. So when you get then this text coming that was meant not for the Brahmins, not for the sannyasis, but this was meant for the Kshatriya class.
Mm.
Kshatriya class are the class of warriors, merchants, and business people, businessmen, not women, business. I try to change my languaging, and then I realize sometimes you have to change it back.
It's true.
Many of us are neither. We're not merchants, and we're not warriors.
Yeah.
It was written for the not sole purpose, but it was written for the purpose to bring spirituality into this class of people. That's what it was done. So that's why it's couched in a war, a violence, horrific violence.
Yeah.
Because this is who they were talking to, people who created that.
Yeah.
And in that, they're trying to say, in the midst of your duty, think of me, God. Think of the divine. In the midst of your duty, do it this way. In a karma yoga way, do it this way. So this is the explanation that Krishna is giving to Arjuna. Unfortunately, for some of us, it is embedded in war, and it highlights one particular deity.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the teachings, extricate them, if you like, from this setting that to many of us is not pleasing.
Yeah.
So talking about the war, how do we feel about war? Matter of fact, it was interesting. Someone listened to the podcast the other day. She came up to me in class and she said, I'm a soldier. I've done 2 tours of Iraq.
Wow.
And now you're talking that the war is not something that's dharmic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting. For her, it's dharmic.
Yeah.
For me, it's not dharmic.
Yeah.
So we have to really see, who are we? And how do we fit into this? So the scripture was written for that main purpose, to teach people of that class spirituality, meditate, how to believe, how to have bhakti, how to do that, and especially karma yoga or service, seva.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do, is bring the teachings out. And I must say, it's challenging. And we're doing the podcast first because we want to get the word out before the book actually comes out. We want to see, how are people reacting to this? Are they good with it? Is this what they want? Do they even care about the Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah.
And what it's showing by the numbers is that people care.
Yeah. I mean, I think more people read the Bhagavad Gita in a way than the Yoga Sutras, because the Yoga Sutras, as you say, are a little bit challenging to understand especially if you're not a practitioner of yoga,
The Gita, if they read it, is a little too trite because they don't understand
Yeah.
the depth of it, the expression of it, the reason for it. For instance, in the Mahabharata, so people need to know that at the end of the war, basically everybody was dead.
Yeah.
So you can say the Pandavas won, but did they?
Yeah.
Can you win if thousands of people have been killed? Can you win if you have to now oversee a kingdom where there's no men left? It's all women? That's what happened.
Yeah.
Who supported those women? They didn't have careers. They couldn't work.
Yeah.
So the whole society really plunged with that destruction. And no one's really talking about that. No one's really saying what happened afterward, except Gandhari. Gandhari, if you read in the Mahabharata, there's different endings. And this is one ending that people really don't talk about. And Gandhari was the mother of the 100 Kauravas.
Yeah.
And she, at the end of the war, she wanted to see what was happening, and she couldn't go. So they gave her the gift of sight, the clairvoyance, to be able to look. And what she saw was devastation. And she started to search for her sons, and she found them in parts. One leg here, one body part here. And she got so hurt. She got so angry. She cursed Krishna. He said to him, "You could have stopped this," which is so fascinating because it's exactly what I said at the beginning to Kama and I were writing together. Exactly what I said to her. Why didn't Krishna stop it? He had the power to stop that war. So she cursed him. And she cursed his whole clan. She said, "I want your women to suffer the way our women are suffering." So this was not a sweet thing. And anybody who tries to make it that way, it just doesn't work. This was a battle. It was horrendous. It was short, but it was devastating. If we can get the teachings from this and put the war in the background, not bring it forward like everybody's saying, "Oh, it's an allegory." Well, an allegory only goes so far. Put it in the background. We explained it, put it back there, and go on with the teachings. That's our intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting. I hadn't really thought about it so much in the context that you're saying, like when I was listening to your conversation about it, but it being like from a woman's perspective, because I've also heard, Gandhi talks about it being an allegory of the war inside of us and the negative qualities versus the positive qualities and things like this. But from like even just a spiritual psychology perspective or transpersonal psychology perspective, like the idea is the good quality in you or the part of you that's connected to essence. I mean, when it comes into that part that feels disowned or feels angry or feels frustrated or evil, the idea is that rather than like cut it off and cut it into pieces or disown it further or try to suppress it or repress it or go to war with it and try and fight it, which only actually makes it stronger. The idea is to embrace it and to bring it into yourself and to be with it and to sit with it and to show it love. And then what happens is it transforms because it becomes a part of you. And then there's the integration rather than the disintegration. And I feel like that's such a feminine way to deal with these dishonored parts of ourselves because you're dealing with them like little children then, right? What do you do with a little child when it's having a tantrum? You meet it with compassion and love, and you bring it into yourself and say, "I'm here with you and you can be angry for as long as you want." Right?
And more the woman's way of doing it.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I'd never really like thought of the Gita from a woman's perspective. And I was like, fascinating. This is really
More now.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Driving is so interesting because I worked for so long in the cancer field, and I came across the same thing there. All these people are talking about, we're going to go kill that cancer. We're going to kill that cancer. And I would go the other way and I'd say, it's part of your body.
Yeah.
You may not want it, but it's there. It's part of your body. It's integrated. It's part of it.
Mhm.
You need to be kind to it. You need to ask it to leave and get out.
Yeah.
But if you destroy it, you are destroying your own body.
Mhm.
And we see that.
Yeah.
We see the side effects. I put in air quotes.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a side effect if it's that disabling.
Yeah.
Effect.
Yeah.
It's not a side effect. It's a direct effect.
Yeah.
And so I would teach them this and to love their body, even though they feel it betrayed them. And it's the same thing here. The other thing that is prevalent in the Gita, which is very difficult for me, and I think most women, is the verbal abuse.
Mm.
And we've cut all that out. I've taken every one of those verbal abuses out.
Mhm.
That does not motivate anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just makes you feel bad and makes you feel worse about yourself. So the Gita is an amazing book. It needs to be modernized.
Yeah.
It needs to be brought into the 21st century in order for it to survive in the West.
Mhm.
Now, in India, they'll probably just keep doing it because once you get used to things, you don't even remember how it could be different.
Yeah.
For Western women, especially,
Mhm.
who are wanting to go further, this is an incredible book to take you further.
Yeah.
However, it has to be updated. There's one sloka in it that talks about the sinful, those are the lowly caste,
Yeah.
and even women can realize God. That can't be. Changed it to anyone with a sincere heart
Yeah.
can realize God.
Yeah.
Why do you have to pick on women? Why do we? It's not just the Gita.
Yeah.
They do this in all the culture, all the religious cultures.
Yeah.
Thank God I wasn't born a woman. That's what the Orthodox Jews say in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to get
Yeah.
our place back in society
Mhm.
and take the power that you were just describing.
Yeah.
We have it.
Yeah.
Let's use it in a benevolent way. We don't want to mimic how the men were using their power.
No.
That's what I said about all these wars going on. Let some women in there. Let's
Yeah.
talk about this.
Yeah.
What can we do about this? Because if you keep killing each other, there's never going to be any resolution, and all it's going to be is sad,
Yeah. Yeah.
hurtful,
Yeah.
destroying innocent lives.
Mhm.
And if a spiritual book tells us this,
Yeah.
how can we not think it's okay? They call it a righteous war, a religious war, a spiritual war. I can't put those two words together.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And to fight a war within you,
Yeah.
why would you do that even?
Yeah, exactly. Because that's just a reflection of what's going on in here is also a reflection of
Exactly.
what's going on out here.
And that's why I talk about instead of a battlefield, women create a fertile field
Mm.
where you can plant things to grow. They're more concerned about their children than someone taking this or that.
Yeah. 100%.
The way to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Controlling someone is not going to make you feel better, ever.
No, not at
Look at all the soldiers that are coming back with PTSD.
Yeah.
Humans aren't meant to do stuff like that.
No, I
We
agree.
don't have the capacity for it.
Yeah, we don't need to.
It's a big job.
It is a big job.
It's coming out. We don't know.
Yeah.
But when we're writing it, we feel like we're representing scores and scores of women
Mm-hmm.
who maybe can't do it themselves,
Yeah.
really want something more. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I feel it's a revolutionary act. I mean, it's so powerful and so profound. And you brought up something really interesting also in the podcast that women are the oldest slaves.
Mhm.
Like,
Continuous slavery in the world.
yeah, the
Yep.
oldest continuous slavery in the world. And that just, like, thinking about that, it really struck me. It struck me very, like, intensely. And I was like, man, that is something, like, we're so enculturated, as you're saying, from these religious texts or just even cultural practices to be secondary citizens. We're so enculturated to accept that as normal, that we have to work twice as hard to get paid just as much, that we have to do everything ourselves, like we're talking about, that we have to show up even 100 times better than a man, because that's the way it's always been. Because we just accept that, well, we're not as good in a sense, right? Even if it's not conscious, there's like that societal enculturation where
a place.
Yes, exactly. And so to just think about that and think about what a revolutionary act it is to do things in a different way, to look at things from a different perspective, and to understand how bringing like a feminine perspective to something completely turns it around. And as we were saying, I mean, if that had been women on the battlefield, I don't know, would it have ended up being a battle? Could there have been another solution? If Krishna was, instead of Krishna, if it was Lakshmi, maybe there would have been a different answer happening.
Exactly. Actually, when I started writing it years ago, my working title was, What if Arjuna was a woman? Yeah. It's so important what you're saying. I hope that everyone can hear that, because this is some place that we've been placed. This is not what we chose.
Yeah, exactly.
We do have the power, and we have used the power, and we've been punished for the power.
Yeah.
I mean, during the 1600s, there were over 5 million women killed as witches. It's just like, it's unbelievable to think about it. But it was over a span of a couple hundred years. But we were the ones that knew when to plant. We were the ones that knew how to cure illnesses. The plants talked to us. We knew how to do these things. We knew how to birth a baby. We knew how to take care of a woman's body. And we were punished for it.
Yeah. Fortunately,
You and I, and probably most of the people listening, are in countries where we don't have that on us. But somebody sent me this email, and it showed different women in burqas. And it showed women in India with a burqa and said, this is not the traditional Indian dress. And it shows a woman in a beautiful silk sari. And then it shows another one, and it says, again, full burqa, and says, this is not the traditional dress of Afghanistan. This is. And it showed another beautiful dress. And it went on through all the countries that women are still, I won't even say second-class citizens. Most of these countries, the horse is more important than their wives.
Yeah.
This is for them.
Yeah.
And for us. Because if one isn't free, none are free.
Yeah.
We have to do something, even on a subtle spiritual level, for these women.
Yeah, 100%.
It's our duty. That's how I feel. If we're free, it's our duty.
Yeah.
I was just talking the other day. I don't know if you heard about this. The women in Poland is right up against the border of Russia and I think
Ukraine. Yeah.
And so they heard about that all these refugees were having to leave because of the bombing and the horrible destruction. And what do they do? They're women, right? Thought, oh, these women are walking with their babies all this way. They're going to be exhausted. So they went and they left baby carriages and diapers and clothes at the border.
Wow.
When the women crossed over, it was there for them. And then being women, they just left the stuff and they left.
Yeah.
They weren't looking for the glory. They probably didn't think anybody even knew.
Yeah. Wow.
That's what women do.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
It's beautiful.
The little thing, the diapers for the babies, carrying these babies, put them down, put them in a carriage.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And that's what we're trying to do now. Everyday spirituality. Every day we can do these things. We don't have to wait till we're sitting in a church or a synagogue or a temple or something, or even in our meditation rooms.
Yeah.
We can do something good every day for somebody, even if it's just sending a prayer.
Yeah.
So I feel solidarity with those women, and I think a lot of people do. They're suffering. And why are they suffering? Because they're women.
Yeah,
Part.
I know. It's crazy. We're part of still the movement that is bringing freedom to women around the world.
Physical freedom, which is the base. And then there's the next level of emotional freedom, mental freedom to be able to say and do what we want to do.
Yeah.
But there's also the spiritual freedom.
Yeah.
And that trickles down.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so inspired, and I can't wait to come and meet you in person at the Yoga Gives Back charity gala in November.
Yep.
So if
We'll be doing a workshop on Friday night on a woman's Gita.
Yes, and it will be wonderful. So if there's people in the LA area or in the US, if you want to buy tickets, you can come and listen and meet you. And also your partner, Rosa?
Kamala Rose.
Kamala Rose, yes.
Yeah. And don't forget to listen to the podcast.
Yes, Woman's Gita. It's wonderful. Great listening. You two are beautiful souls and so much to think about as you're discussing the Gita from a woman's perspective is rich. So definitely go listen to it. Yeah. Yeah. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to find out?
Our website, abundantwellbeing.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll throw all of your links in the show notes. And so people can come find you. And I know you're teaching, doing workshops and retreats and all the things. Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
I absolutely loved that conversation, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well and learned something new about yourself and about spirituality and yoga. And if you would like to take your practice to the next level, I'm going to invite you to donate and sponsor Yoga Gives Back. It is that time of year. We're heading into Thanksgiving, and I would just love for you to share your love of yoga and use some of your empowerment to support women and children in India with microloans and scholarships for higher education. The 17th annual Global Gala for Yoga Gives Back is happening. It's an in-person event Friday, November 8th, Saturday, November 9th, and the big event dinner is on Sunday, November 10th. We'll be honoring Belinda Carlisle in Los Angeles with the Namaste Award this year. And it is an opportunity to mix and mingle with celebrity teachers and international teachers, all in support of Yoga Gives Back and the incredible NGO organizations that this non-for-profit supports in India. I was there earlier this year and visited the centers and the organizations and met the incredible humans who are heading up these NGOs. And they are just wonderful human beings. They are doing such great work for women and children in underserved areas and populations. And without your support and your donations, your financing of Yoga Gives Back, they would not have the programs and be able to support the women and the children in India that really their lives are changed in such a dramatic way by being able to access higher education through these scholarships. And these women are empowered and they are changing the face of India for the better. So please support Yoga Gives Back. You can hop online and participate in their silent auction if you can't be there in person. Make a donation. Please support this beautiful, wonderful charity organization with your energy, your funds, and give back a little bit of what you have received from the practice of yoga back to the people whose country yoga has come from, back to the people who really can use your help. $1 goes a long, 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 long way in India. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that we continue this work and helping these wonderful, beautiful human beings just have that next step up in life so that they have access to the programs and the education that can really change not just their lives, but their families' lives and their communities. And in that way, we can pretty much work towards eliminating poverty in a country that can really use our support and our help in a way that grows exponentially and makes ripple effects throughout. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And thank you for your support of Yoga Gives Back. It makes all the difference. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.